Vampire Survivors meets Asteroids is the latest Survivors game that's been sucking up all my time, and despite what its name might lead you to believe, Time Wasters is both active in its combat and thoughtful in its design. Its bullet heaven progression fantasy nails the satisfaction of numerical power increase and build-based decision making, but it also marries that to arcadey shooter fun. It doesn't prioritize endless replayability like some of its peers, but that doesn't stop it from being an enjoyable action roguelike. The time you spend with it may not be infinite, but it certainly won't be wasted. The Asteroids comparison is beyond just a surface level resemblance. More than just piloting a ship and destroying some asteroids for bonuses, Time Wasters structures its map in an Asteroids-like fashion. Though technically a small map by genre standards, it loops recursively on itself so that when you fly into one end, you'll find yourself popping out the other. It's a design decision with significance bolstered by the fact that we may be in space, but we aren't in a vacuum. There are locations on this map that do things. The most significant twist on the Survivors formula is externalized power gains. A lot of what you would normally expect to be somewhere on an upgrade tree like health regen, increased currency acquisition, and even your screen clearing shmup bomb are actually physical places you need to travel to with cooldowns associated. That adds a tremendous amount of texture to how you play. You'll have your traditional bullet heaven concerns like positioning and horde management, but now you need to also weave those into a long-term piloting strategy. The world is carved into zones of relative safety and utility, and ensuring that you're maximizing the benefit of those zones can move the needle on your success. Rigid wave timing allows you to make choices like, do I want to fight this next wave near my turrets and bomb planet to ensure my highest survival rate, or am I powerful enough to fight them near a defenseless bonus currency zone that will accelerate my leveling? They're the sorts of choices that demand and reward an understanding of your current build and its relative strength over the course of the game. It'll take a few runs for you to see how those builds can work. Time Wasters has a dozen playable characters, but they share more than they don't. Each falls into the same weight category and speed. They're all nimble, fighter-like classes, with their differentiating factors being main weapon, sub-weapon, a shield passive, and a boost passive. The more characters you unlock, the more their traits worm their way into subsequent runs, and their mixing and matching allows for the creation of Frankenstein combinations with synergizing bonuses. There's some clever tricks to how these powers are distributed that help create satisfying progression thresholds. For starters, there are shortcuts on the D-pad you can use instead of pausing the game to get your incremental level-by-level bonuses, but I appreciate the other ways in which new powers are attained too outside of just leveling. The shop you can fly to takes a separate currency you acquire from flying around and killing bosses, and they give the equivalent of about 5 levels worth of power increase for whichever trait you select. Getting to particular points in a particular trait's stats will also have them burst forward into a new power. Your abilities effectively go Super Saiyan at certain points, with modified visual effects coming with their new stats. It all helps sell this fantasy of increasing power. It's not just this linear damage curve you're following, but also spikes where newfound power is tangible. And the same sorts of enemies that were giving you problems 30 seconds ago are now helpless before the bolstered chain lightning or whatever it was you prioritized. Even the acquisition of the currency itself tickles the same part of your brain. The little golden gems that are your primary leveling method don't just absorb into your ship, they swirl around and almost orbit the ship itself before coming in, giving this illusion of weight and mass that only becomes exacerbated during late game play when those currencies are in much greater quantity. Of all the little things Time Wasters gets right, the most surprising was its micro-level emphasis on piloting fundies. Auto-attacking is the default control mechanism, but that doesn't mean your attacks are on autopilot. A subtle quirk to how most abilities shoot off is their predictable fire patterns. The base katana, for example, always unsheathes from the left side of your ship, then rotates to the right. Optimal play dictates that you're flying starboard to your biggest threats, then circling them clockwise to get the most damage in. The default behavior of most enemy ships isn't just to fly towards you, but to encircle you with their peers. They'll close gaps around you, which means that fleeing an encounter or tactically retreating towards a safer location requires that you punch a hole through the enemy line, then zoom out quickly before it's patched. It's a simple but satisfying pattern, and it's just the right amount of complexity to be bolted onto what's ultimately a game of numbers and progression. It's in its static arrangement and enemy design where Time Wasters fizzles out long term. Each run has the same enemies, bosses, and planet raids at the same wave intervals across all runs. The only randomness at play is in the leveling and power-up process rather than on the opposite side with the challenges you're being presented, which does mean that Time Wasters is a game you can pretty readily solve. Though there are many combinations you can use to overcome the enemy hordes, without variety among them you'll find little reason to venture out from your safe favorite builds. Long-term play only exists in the form of satisfying the needs of all the meta progression and also in a few character-specific challenges you can undertake. But regardless of whatever any completion percentage will tell you, you'll have engaged with most of the strategic offering Time Wasters can provide inside of 20 hours. But it's a damn good and strategically unique 20 hours. Though the static encounter design does feel like a betrayal of Time Waster's roguelite framework, there's enough depth in its systems to be well worth a few dozen runs. Its addictive progression fantasy and arcadey shoot-'em-up core are fun in a vacuum, and magnified by a map with location-based considerations that add tactical opportunities to the moment-to-moment flying and shooting. It's a great game, I just wish I had more incentive to waste more time with it.